BookTube! This is Breckie from Breckie Writes, this is Breckie Reads, and this is my April wrap-up video. April was a great reading month for me. In fact, it's the second best month I've had for reading all year. I read 14 books this month. I have a lot to talk about, so I'm just gonna jump right in. I read the entire Luna Chronicles this month, so the first 3 books should come as no surprise because they are Cinder, Scarlet, and Cress. I loved these books. I gave them each 4 out of 5 stars. These were just really fun science fiction fairy tale retellings, and you wouldn't think that science fiction fairy tales would work, but they really do. Cinder is the first one, and it follows our main character, Cinder, and this is a retelling of Cinderella, but the Cinderella character is a cyborg and a mechanic, so not exactly the same story, but it is so good and really gets this whole series off with a bang. The second book is Scarlet. This is a retelling of Little Red Riding Hood. The main character, whose name is Scarlet, works on a farm, and she falls in with a young man named Wolf, who is a street fighter. I'm not gonna say much more than that, but she does eventually meet up with Cinder, and there are lots of hijinks that ensue from there. And then the third book in the series is Cress. Cress is a Rapunzel retelling, if the cover doesn't give it away, and Cress is a computer hacker who happens to be locked in a satellite. I'm not gonna say any more than that because of spoilers, but I loved all 3 of these books. The Luna Chronicles were fantastic. 4 out of 5 stars for all of them. So good. Then it was time for the first annual Genreathon. Genreathon was hosted by Brittany from Under the Radar Books, Josh from Scribbles Reads, Lauren from Lauren the Books, and Kristin from Vienna Reads Books. And I will link my wrap-up video down below because I'm not going to go through a super in-depth wrap-up for these books, but basically the idea of Genreathon was to read 3 different books from 3 different genres, and it was kind of encouraging you to read maybe outside of your normal genres, at least 1 or 2 of the books outside of your normal genres, and I did that. The first book I read for Genreathon was The Good Luck Girls of Shipwreck Lane by Kelly Harms. This is an adult contemporary romance fiction, and I did not love it. I didn't dislike it, but I didn't love it. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. This reads like a Hallmark Channel movie, and the most redeeming thing about this book is that there's a lot of great food writing. If you're interested, you can check out a more in-depth review in my Genreathon wrap-up video, which I will link down below. The next book I read for Genreathon was Burial Rites, and you guys, this was such a good book. I mean, look at all the tabs. This was fantastic. I loved this book so much I did a full book review of it, so if you are interested in a lot of my thoughts and feelings about this book, because I have a lot of feelings about this book, I will link my full-length book review on Burial Rites. This was a 5 out of 5 stars for me. This was my only 5-star read of the month, and I loved this book. The prose is beautiful, the story is heartbreaking and wonderful. This is a historical fiction, but it also, I would say, is literary fiction. So if you're looking for a literary fiction book that's accessible and I think will move you and that has gorgeous writing, check out Burial Rites. This was the best book I probably have read all month. And the last book that I managed to read for Genreathon was Vengeance Road by Erin Bowman. It was a library book, so I don't actually have the physical copy anymore. And this was a YA Western. I have never read a Western. I've seen a bunch of Western films, never read a Western. I thought this would be a great place to check out that genre, and honestly, I was kind of disappointed. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't for me, and what I realized is that I think the writing level is more middle grade and not YA. If someone had marketed this to me as a middle grade book, I would have believed it, and I probably would have really enjoyed it. But this was marketed as YA, and it just felt so young and, I don't know, I want to say cheap, but cheap is not the right word. It felt so simple, and I think of that in compared to some of the other YA that I've been reading, like Uprooted or Passenger or the Grisha trilogy, which are complicated and have complex characters. This just did not meet that, and so it fell flat for me. I did give it 3 out of 5 stars. I might range it more towards a 2.5 rather than a 3-star review. So yeah, this one just didn't do it for me. Then I finished Witches, Salem 1692. I finally finished this book. I had started it in January, and I have been working on this book for the last couple of months. I decided to read this as an audiobook rather than trying to tackle this rather dense book, and I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. And the reason it is not a lower rating is because the research that went into this is impeccable. The research is incredible, and the first several chapters are actually really interesting, but about halfway through, I was just really done. It is dense, it gets really boring, there's a lot of repetition, and it just feels like she's writing to hear herself write, or talking to hear yourself talk, you know, like it just feels like an editor should have said, nope, let's just cut this whole chapter, or let's condense some of these scenes. And I felt like it was so repetitive and redundant and without any insights for most of the first 2/3 of the book that I was like, why am I reading this? Why am I reading this? And it's only because I'm stubborn that I did not DNF this. So if I was only talking about the writing style, I'd probably give this a 2 because it is just so redundant and can be boring. But the research in this is really incredible. I mean, if you were looking for something that's almost academic, like almost something you could teach in a class, that would be this. So I don't know, I gave it 3 out of 5, and maybe it's more of a 2.5 out of 5. This was too long. It was too long. I don't care if you've won a Pulitzer, Stacey Schiff. This was too long, and it got really boring, and I read nonfiction. So, yeah. Then it was Author-a-thon! We rolled from Genre-thon into Author-a-thon, so I decided to participate because why not do all the readathons? That's what April is for, apparently, is all the readathons all the time. And I jumped into 3 more fiction books. I did finish during the week of my Author-a-thon Approaching the Quran by Michael Sells. There isn't a cover photo for this on Goodreads. I don't know why. This was a book I had to read for one of my classes. I did read the whole thing cover to cover, so I am including it as a book that I finished. It is a book on the textual linguistics of the Quran. It is not an intro book like a person on the street might pick up, so unless you're in a class or you're already familiar with the Quran, I would not recommend this. I got a lot out of it, but I'm in a class, so that's probably why. Alright, so for Author-a-thon, I decided not to do the 6 challenges that Sam from Thoughts on Tomes and Joanna Sousa set. They were the hosts of Author-a-thon. I decided to read one author for the whole week, which was the other way. There were 2 ways to participate. I participated by reading one author through the whole week. I did a wrap-up video, so I will include that down below in case you're curious for more in-depth reviews of each of the books. And I decided to finish up reading the Lunar Chronicles, so my first book for Author-a-thon was Fairest by Marissa Meyer. I really enjoyed this. I did give this 3.5 stars rather than 4 stars. It's just so much more simple because it is so much shorter, and this is the story of Queen Lavanna. This is her backstory. This is how she became the evil queen. I think that this creates some really interesting parallels between Queen Lavanna and another character that I'm not going to name because spoilers, but there is a really clear parallel between Queen Lavanna and another character that reminds me of Harry and Voldemort. So yeah, I enjoyed Fairest for that reason, and I think it really fleshed out the world, but it wasn't as, to me, it just wasn't quite as good as the other books, but I still did enjoy this and gave this 3.5 stars. Then my next book that I read for Author-a-thon, which I also read in one day for Dewey's 24-hour readathon, was The Behemoth That Is Winter. This is over 800 pages. I mean, this is not a short book. This was a chunk of a book to read. I read the first couple of chapters, like, in the paperback, and then I decided for the readathon that I would listen to it as an audiobook, and I was able to get through this entire audiobook in one day. It was really good. I was actually really satisfied with this. I loved how it kind of wrapped up. There were definitely some holes, and there are definitely a couple of places where I think things are almost in too neat of a bow, but it is a fairy tale. These have all been fairy tale retellings, so it didn't bother me because, you know, fairy tales. I really loved Winter, and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. And my last book of Author-a-thon was Stars Above by Marissa Meyer. This is a collection of short stories, all but 2 of which take place before the events of Cinder. So these are backstories that the characters have. These all predate when you meet them in the first couple of books of the Lunar Chronicles. There is one in here that is an event that does take place in Cinder, but told from Prince Kai's perspective, and there is a wedding of some characters. I'm not gonna tell you who, but I basically finished Winter and then I read the wedding story because I couldn't wait. I'm really impatient. I don't know if you've picked up on that. I'm really impatient. I would not recommend reading these before you finish the series. I think that these really do better to wait and read all of them afterwards, but having read these, I now would like to go back and reread this series with all this knowledge. But I wouldn't necessarily want all this knowledge before I finished, because I think it might spoil me for some things. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. They were really cute. They just deliver. They promise a fun fairy tale retelling that takes you out of the world in which you live, that has funny characters and heartfelt moments, and is true to the fairy tales, but without being like labored. You know, it just felt very natural, and I loved it. I loved this series. It was so good. So after the Lunar Chronicles, I was feeling a little bit book slumpy. I was kind of afraid that I was just gonna not want to read anything else. So I sat down and I read Lumberjanes Volume 3, A Terrible Plan, and this was great. It was nice and short. It made sure that I didn't wallow too much in all of my Lunar Chronicle feels. This was really cute. Now I will say I gave this 4 out of 5 stars and not 5 out of 5 stars. I don't think this was as funny as the first 2 volumes. This had more tender moments and some relationship building, which was very sweet, but it just wasn't as funny and there wasn't as much adventuring as I would like. I get why they did this, but you know, I want them to have all kinds of epic adventures. This was just, it was cute. I love these books and it was very sweet. It had some guest artists, so the art is a little bit different in this collection. And I just love these. I am here for Lumberjanes. I will be buying all of these as long as they come out. If I have expendable income and they're making Lumberjanes comics, I will be using that expendable income on buying these. I'm here for this. I'm here for this. All right, the next book that I finished in the month of April was another audiobook, and it was Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. Now, I listened to Will Wheaton narrate this audiobook, and who doesn't love Will Wheaton narrating an audiobook? I mean, come on. It was so good. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. It really is just a love letter to geek culture and the 1980s, and I really appreciated that. However, I don't play video games, and it's not because I'm against video games. I kind of wish that I played video games because I watched my friends play Zelda, and I wanted to play them because I think I would love that immersive experience of sort of living out the adventures that I normally just read in books. But I have really terrible hand-eye coordination. Like, I look at my fingers when I type. I can type pretty quickly, but I have to look at my fingers. I can't look at the screen, and that means that when I have a controller, I'm looking at my hands and not at the screen, and so my character, like, runs into walls. Because I am not a gamer, I think that a lot of the references and some of the gaming culture that is important to Ready Player One was lost on me. And I also found that there was a whole bunch of times when there were just info dumps, just big chunks of info dumps, and I don't mind some info dumps. Like, I get that. It has to happen sometimes. There were just moments where I was listening to this audiobook and I was like, he's info dumping again, and that just drew me out of a story and was kind of obnoxious, and I think if I was a gamer, I would care about the info dumps more than I did because I'm not a gamer. Does that make sense? But I did really enjoy it. Again, 4 out of 5 stars. It was a really fun read, and if you are someone who's looking to get into audiobooks, this would be a great place to start because Will Wheaton does a good job. It's really fun. It's really easy to listen to. I really enjoyed it, and I'm sad that it took me this long to get to Ready Player One. All right, and the final book that I finished in the month of April was Salsa Dancing into the Social Sciences, Research in the Age of Infoglut. This is by Kristin Luker. She is a professor of sociology at the University of California, Berkeley. Berkeley is a fantastic university. It's one of the best in the country, and she has kind of created a intro guidebook. This is not for somebody who's never done social science research, but this is for somebody who maybe hasn't done it in a long time or is struggling or comes from a different area of the social sciences or from the humanities that is going to be doing social science research. I'm currently putting together a social science proposal. You are going to be seeing more books like this on my channel probably. It is a fairly quick read considering it is a research handbook, and she's funny. Like, she has a saying about the terror of the 10,000 index cards, and she's got a great sense of humor, and in someone who's trying to teach you research and methods, it's really helpful because it can be very dry. So I enjoyed this, but you know, maybe not for the average booktube person. So those of you who've been playing the home game know that I read 36 books as of the end of March, and with the 14 I've read this month, I now have gotten to 50 books. I'm halfway through my 100 book challenge, and it's only the end of April. This is just so wonderful. I feel like really excited and energized about my book reading and my challenge and all of that. It has meant that I have not been working on my novel. No, I haven't been working on my novel. Part of that is because I have been working on this research project proposal, so when I'm not working on my regular work stuff or reading my books that I read for fun, I've been working on this proposal stuff, and that just is exhausting, and I don't have the brain space to write fiction. I'm hoping to fix that in May and definitely in June, so we'll see. But 50 books a year! I'm so psyched about that. I only have 50 more books to read. I can do that. I can totally do that. So how was your month of reading? Was April as successful a month of reading for you as it was for me? I certainly hope so. What was your favorite book of the month? I think my favorite book probably was either Burial Rites or Winter. Burial Rites was the best book of the month for sure, and I think Winter might be the one I had the most feelings about. What was your worst book of the month? I think my worst book was probably Witches, Salem 1692. too long. Thank you guys for watching, and I will talk to y'all soon. Bye!